Welcome to Sola Church Online.
I'm Rigg. This is my wife, Miranda Landers, and together we lead Sola Church, a life-giving church in Santa Monica, California.
We meet in person and online on Sundays at 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Our in-person service is held indoors at Joslyn Park Auditorium, which is at 633 Kensington Road.
And our pre-recorded online service can be found on our website, solachurch.life, as well as on Facebook and YouTube. That's at Sola Church LA.
And we have a great service for you today. Let's worship.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. And you have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. And you have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't turn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. And you have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't turn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till love found me's the 99. I couldn't turn it, I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. You're the God of this city. You're the King of these people. You're the Lord of this nation. You are. You're the light in the darkness. You're the hope to the hopeless. You're the peace to the restless. You are. And there is no one like our God. There is no one like our God. Greater things have yet to come. Greater things are still to be done in this city. Greater things have yet to come. Greater things are still to be done in this city. You're the God of this city. You're the King of these people. You're the Lord of this nation. You are. You're the light in the darkness. You're the hope to the hopeless. You're the peace to the restless. You are. You are. There is no one like our God.
This is that time in our service when we worship with our giving. If you're just checking us out today, please don't feel like you have to participate. But if Sola Church is your church home or these online services have been a blessing to you, it's super easy to make a one-time tax-deductible donation or even to schedule a recurring gift.
The easiest way is to scan the QR code on your screen, but you can always go to solachurch.life and click the tab at the top that says Give.
Thank you so much for your generosity. You're making it possible for us to reach the west side of LA and beyond.
Let's get into our time of teaching.
All right, so once again, as we start our teaching time, I just want to remind you guys about the transition that's happening at Sola Church. Sola Church is suspending in-person services at the end of June and transitioning to a hybrid digital church, micro church model in July. So what is digital church? This is digital church. For those of you guys that have been watching Sola Church online, nothing is going to change for you. Sola Church will continue to produce a weekly online service premiering every Sunday at 10 a.m. right here where you're watching it now. What is micro church? Well, that refers to our small groups. And so we will continue to have both in-person and online small groups. Our in-person groups, starting in July, will meet on both Tuesday and Thursday, not meaning that someone would attend twice a week. They'd choose one or the other. And our online group is going to move from Tuesday to Wednesday. So if you're watching online now, if you have been watching online historically, you're probably in another part of the country, and that would be your group. Like if you wanted to participate in our Zoom group, it's going to move from Tuesdays to Wednesdays. Would love to tell you more about that. So another thing people are asking is, can they continue to give? The answer is yes, of course. Sola Church Online will continue as a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. And so I'm thanking you now in advance for your continued support. We can't do it without you. And we look forward to continuing to partner with you. Will Sola Church ever meet again in person? Yeah, those on the west side, we're going to be doing quarterly pop-up church events, as well as other things that we'll talk more about when we can. So let's get into our teaching time for today. I heard a story about a woman in Germany. She withdrew 380 euros from the bank, about 438 US dollars. And she had to run another errand. So she left the euros underneath some papers in the car. She left the euros and her dog in the car while she ran in and did this other errand. And when she came out, the money and even the papers that it was hidden under were gone. And her dog was acting super weird. Her dog was acting sick. And so she called the police, thinking that her dog had been drugged and that thieves had taken her money. And so here's the funny thing. After she called the police and filed a police report, she took the dog to the vet. And the vet gave the dog an injection. And after about 20 minutes, 6 of the 50 euro notes reappeared. I think you know what I'm saying. The dog spat out the rest of the money in shreds, along with the papers, the bank statements that had been on top of the cash. Oh my goodness gracious. The dog had eaten her money. So what the funniest thing to me wasn't even that, although that's pretty funny. But it was what the police said in a statement afterwards. The police said, it should be noted that the damaged banknotes could be changed at the state central bank. So there was no material loss in the case. And I'm just thinking, wouldn't it suck to be bank guy? Oh man, you're the person at the bank that this barfed up money is brought to. Some of it shredded to sort out. Oh man. That'd be a good job for Mike Rowe, right? Remember that show, Dirty Jobs of Mike Rowe? Well, as if you didn't have enough to worry about when it comes to money, like housing and food and transportation and insurance and clothing and medical expenses and inflation. Now you got to worry about the dog. Like, really? Oh my gosh. For those of us who always seem to have more month than money, this might explain some things. I'll bet you among our online audience, there are some suspicious pet owners right now. Well, let's go ahead and open to James chapter 5 as we continue our series Next Level. It's easy to settle. But what if God is calling you to grow, to lead, to live boldly? That's why this verse by verse series through the book of James called Next Level. It's all about practical, powerful faith that makes a difference in real life. This is the series that says to us, don't settle, go next level. And that's what James did. We've talked more than once in this series about how James went from not being a follower of Jesus to being a follower of Jesus to being a leader of followers of Jesus, and all of that in a relatively short period of time. So, James leveled up. He teaches us to level up. This is next level stuff. And this talk is the one about finances. I want to talk about several reasons why we don't embrace God's plan for our finances. Let's look at James 5, beginning in verse 1. It says, "Come now, you rich, weep and howl for your miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver are corroded, and their corrosion will be a witness against you and will eat your flesh like fire. You have heaped up treasure in the last days." Now, as I mentioned last week, come now in the New King James Version reads listen in the NIV. Now listen, that is. Or in the New Living Translation, look here. Like James was trying to get the attention of his readers. And so I'm asking now, does James have your attention? Does God have your attention? I want you to notice in those verses I read, notice the nouns riches and garments in verse 2, gold and silver in verse 3. And notice the descriptors, complicated and moth-eaten in verse 2, and corroded in verse 3. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me a little bit of back in the day. MTV had a show called Cribs where they would tour the houses of celebrities. Amazing to see how they lived. But then VH1 had a show called Behind the Music where they would talk about what was really going on in the lives of many of these same people. And it wasn't pretty. So what I'm getting at is that you'd watch MTV Cribs and be like, wow. And then you'd watch VH1's Behind the Music and be like, oh. Well, this is kind of like that. Oh, man. Notice that phrase heaped up in verse 3. The Greek verb implies to keep in store, to reserve. Now, James is not discouraging saving. The Bible nowhere prohibits saving money. In fact, the Bible teaches us to save. Proverbs 6 verse 6 says, "Take a lesson from the ants. Learn from their ways. They labor hard all summer, gathering food for winter." So the Bible doesn't prohibit saving. What it prohibits is hoarding. Now, part of the problem when we come to a passage like this and a topic like this is we don't think it applies to us because we're not rich, right? Like you heard me read the words of James. He's addressing rich people. Verse 1, come now, you rich. We're like, well, I'm not rich, so I'm just going to move on to the next section. Well, wait a minute, not so fast. You know, the median household income in Santa Monica is nearly $110,000 a year. Now, that's considerably higher than the rest of the United States. The median household income in the United States is close to, actually just over $80,000. So let's just use that. Let's just use that $80,000 number. There's a website called How Rich Am I? You can check it out. Google it, check it out. When you go to that site, you can enter like your annual income and it will tell you how you compare to the rest of the world's population. So using that $80,000 number, if your household income was $80,000 a year, you would be in the richest 1% of the global population. Like your annual income would be 24 times the global median. Let's just try to visualize being in the top 1%. That would be like if you had the entire world's population standing here ready to be paired off. And you put one person over here, and then you put 99 people over there. And then you put another one person over here, and another 99 people over there. And you kept doing that until everyone had been sorted. And you're in the 1%. You're in this tiny, relatively small group of people looking at this relatively large group of people. You know, what I'm saying is this. I'm saying that not only are you and I among the richest people in the world today, but we are among the richest people in all of human history. Yeah, for real. Sit with that for a minute. So there's what we might call a parallel passage of sorts written by Paul, but on the same topic. In 1 Timothy 6, verse 17, Paul said to Timothy, command those who are rich that they be ready to give, ready to share, storing up for themselves. And that gives us God's financial plan. You know, God as financial planner. This is his financial plan. When I have a payday, when you have a payday, first, you know, we give to our home church and then to other ministries that we support. That's the ready to give part. Next, we share with family members and friends with needs or with other nonprofits. That's the willing to share part of the plan. Then I enjoy the rest while saving some for future enjoyment. That's the storing up part of the plan. God's financial plan. I give, I share, I enjoy, including saving some for future enjoyment. Now that's God's financial plan. What's rich guy's financial plan? The hypothetical person that, you know, we're being presented with by James and by Paul, since I'm including the passage in Timothy. Well, rich guy's financial plan is first I spend. Next, if there's anything left, I save. Then, if there's anything left, I share or give. What does that look like? Well, it doesn't look like sharing or giving. What it ends up looking like is an overdrawn bank account, an empty savings account, credit cards that are over the limit, while the needs of family members and friends go unmet, while churches and parachurch groups and missionaries are under-resourced. Rich guy's financial plan is a bad plan. So what keeps us from trying God's financial plan? Well, in a word, in this first point, fear. Why would fear keep us from trying God's financial plan? Well, see, we have the idea that financial resources equal financial security. And if that were true, it would make sense that more financial resources would equal more financial security. And conversely, less financial resources would equal less financial security, right? Did I say that right? More financial resources would mean more financial security. Less financial resources would mean less financial security. So when we read the Bible, and it implies that, you know, less is more, that after giving and sharing, we're going to have less financial resources, but somehow that's going to equal more financial security. Well, that's counterintuitive. And that's where the fear factor comes in. You know, in 2 Corinthians 9, verse 7, Paul, again talking about this topic, said that God loves a cheerful giver. And we aspire to be cheerful givers, but more often, maybe if we're being honest, if we're keeping it real, we're fearful givers. And so we follow rich guy's financial plan and we get into trouble. What's the first thing we do? We ask God to get us out of trouble, right? Which is a smart thing to do when we're in trouble, to ask God to get us out. Why do we ask him to get us out of trouble? Because he can. Yeah. But here's the thing we never stop to think about. If God can get us out of financial trouble, can't he keep us from getting into financial trouble in the first place? like, wouldn't it make sense to at least try God's financial plan? Back to that passage in 1 Timothy 6, verse 17, Paul said that we are not to trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God. So that reminds me again of those descriptors in verses 2 and 3, corrupted, moth-eaten, corroded. Now, it's funny because gold doesn't corrode. You know, possibly James or Paul, James, getting confused now that I'm bringing in the Paul passage. James possibly was using hyperbole. But he may also have simply been talking about gold losing value in some sense. You notice that phrase in verse 3 at the end of the verse, in the last days. This prompts us to think about finances, not only in terms of time, but in terms of eternity. It's interesting that in Revelation, when it describes the eternal state, when it describes what we sometimes call heaven, it talks about the street of the city being pure gold. So, I'm using the term heaven there in an imprecise way. There is a lot of technical stuff we could get into about Revelation 21, but this idea of the street being gold, if the streets in heaven are paved with gold, to put it another way, if in heaven gold is just pavement, then maybe it's time to think differently about wealth. Yeah. Jesus in Luke 12, verse 21 said, he is a fool who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. So, we're talking about finances today, and we're talking about reasons why we don't try God's financial plan. And one reason is fear. We bring the scarcity mentality to money management. We have this fear that there won't be enough left over for us if we were to give and to share before enjoying. So another reason beyond fear is greed. Yeah, let's look at verses 4 and 6. We'll come back to verse 5. Verse 4, indeed, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, cry out. And the cries of the reapers have reached the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth, that is, the Lord of hosts. Verse 6, you have condemned, you have murdered the just. He does not resist you. So just like the Bible doesn't prohibit saving, it actually teaches it, so too the Bible doesn't prohibit earning. The Bible actually teaches it. Proverbs 8, verse 18 says, you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth. So, here it's not earning that's the problem, but it's business practices that are illegal or that are unethical that James is prohibiting, like withholding wages, as in verse 4, or manipulating the legal system, as in verse 6. There is a question as to whether it was James's readers, or at least some of them, who were the privileged, or more likely, whether James' readers were their victims. But then as now, there was a conversation around the impact that things like wealth and race and privilege had in the courtroom. Yeah. Now, back to us. The problem is that we think of our money as belonging to us, and it doesn't. We have an ownership issue. We think we're owners, and God says we're managers. Or, to use a Bible word, stewards. That's just a Bible word for a manager, is a steward. Paul uses that word in 1 Corinthians 4, verse 2, and he says, moreover, it is required in stewards, someone who manages a household and household finances for another person. It is required in stewards that one be found faithful. Now, just as an example, let's use 10% as an example, as a point of reference. Some people set out to give 10%. And I think that's a great starting point. I highly recommend and encourage that. But imagine that you are a money manager. Like, imagine that's how you make a living, is by managing other people's money. And imagine you had a rich client. I'm talking like Elon rich, like hundreds of billions rich. And imagine that they hired you to manage their money. Like this rich client hires you to manage his or her money. And check this out. They tell you that you can keep 90% of it. If you will manage their hundreds of billions of dollars, you can keep 90% of it. That's a pretty good deal. I don't know any money manager in the world that would turn that deal down. Basically, that's what God does. Like in the example where we're talking about at least aspiring to give a tenth, what's shocking is not that God asks us for so much of our money, but that he lets us manage so much of his. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. He lets us keep so much of his money. Unreal. Oh, man. What keeps us from trying God's financial plan? Well, in a word, in this second point, it's greed. It's not only that rich guy didn't give, it's that rich guy didn't share either. So in that first Timothy passage, Paul told Timothy, command those who are rich to do good, that they be rich in good works. Like sharing can mean that, in addition to supporting our church home and maybe other ministries that we support, that we're going to help family members, maybe a parent or a grandparent living in a fixed income, or even an adult child or grandchild who needs financial assistance. We might help friends, maybe a friend who's lost a job or who's lost their roommate and can't make rent. In the years that I've pastored, decades that I've spent in ministry, I've seen, like the church I led in Austin, I've seen where like families adopted neighborhood families for Christmas, providing all of their Christmas gifts. I've seen families provide scholarships for people. I've seen cars given to people without transportation. I've seen cash given to people with medical bills. I've seen computers bought for people who could never afford them. I've seen major appliances given to people who need them. I mean, even earlier this year, in response to the LA wildfires, I saw people in our church and people across the country step up and give to our disaster relief fund that we used to support other frontline organizations, as well as to give money directly to families affected by the wildfires. Such a beautiful thing. And it's easy sometimes to forget just how much others have done for us, but God, He never forgets what we've done for others. In Hebrews 6, verse 10, it says, for God is not unjust to forget your work and labor of love, which you have shown toward His name, in that you have ministered to the saints and do minister. I love that. In verse 4, it talks about how the unpaid wages, withheld wages cry out. So here James, anthropomorphizes money. And he adds that even the cries of the workers have reached the ears of the Lord. We have a saying kind of like this. It reminds me of our saying, money talks. You've heard that, right? Money talks. One comedian quipped, if money talks, all it ever says to me is goodbye. How many people relate to that? Yeah, I see you in the comment section. Oh man, but maybe the question is this: when my money talks to God, what does it say? The way I give, the way I share, before I enjoy, what does it say? So reasons we don't try God's financial plan: fear, greed, and then one more, lust. Yeah, verse 5, you have lived on the earth in pleasure and luxury. You have fattened your hearts as in a day of slaughter. So again, there's a question around whether the metaphorical slaughter is of the privileged or of their victims. But just like before, just like in the first point, we said the Bible doesn't prohibit saving, it teaches it. And in the second point, we said the Bible doesn't prohibit earning, it teaches it. And here we're saying that the Bible doesn't prohibit spending, it teaches it. It does. 1 Corinthians 6, verse 17, we've talked about it already. God, who gives us richly all things to enjoy. Oh man, so the problem isn't with spending, it's with wasting. James is prohibiting wasting, not spending. So what keeps us from trying God's financial plan? Well, in a word, it's lust. Lust for pleasure, you see that in the text. Think indulgence. Lust for luxury, you see that in the text. Think excess. We use phrases like conspicuous consumption. We talk about, things as status symbols. We even, have ideas like that of keeping up with the Joneses, which has been defined as spending money we don't have to buy things we don't need to impress people we don't even like. Yeah. Keeping up with the Joneses. Back in 1 Timothy, there's a verse that is often misquoted and for that reason misunderstood. I mean, I say misquoted. This is how it reads in the King James Version. Maybe I should say poorly translated. 1 Timothy 6:10, King James Version, money is the root of all evil. A better translation is in the New King James Version, the love of money is a root of all evil. So it's not money, it's the love of money, but it's not the root of all evil. It is a root of all kinds of evil. You know, to cut to the chase, the point is that the heart of the matter, once again, is the matter of the heart. In Psalm 62, verse 10, it says, if riches increase, do not set your heart on them. You know, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So treasure, then heart. And we could understand this in a way that is descriptive, and or we could understand this in a way that is prescriptive. What do I mean? Well, we could just think of it as being descriptive, that, you know, what we do with our money is a good indicator of where our hearts are at. And that would be true. But to look at it in a prescriptive way would mean that we can direct our hearts where we want them to go by sending our money in that direction. So where do you want your heart to go? Put your money there. Do you want to have a heart for God? Then give, and your heart will follow. Do you want to have a heart for others? Then share, and your heart will follow. Give and share, and you will find your heart forming more for God and more for others. Finances. Yeah, what would keep us from trying God's financial plan? Fear, greed, lust. You know, it's interesting, in that First Timothy passage, Paul, you know, telling Timothy what to say to those who are rich, he says what he does, and then he says this, he says that they may lay hold on eternal life. You know, when we talk about eternal life, it's not just a quantity of life that lasts forever, but it's a quality of life that begins right here and now. When you think about those things that make up a person's quality of life, right at the heart of that is relationships. Right at the heart of my quality of life is my relationship with God and my relationships with the people around me. And so my quality of life is going to improve exponentially as I give and as I share. Even if it's counterintuitive, it's God's plan, it's God's way. And what have you really got to lose by trying God's financial plan? Father, thank you for speaking into this very important part of our lives. And Lord, it is hard. You know, we've done the math and we're scared and we want what we want. And Lord, it's just a struggle. But would you help us? Would you help us to trust you with our finances, to demonstrate that we're trusting you with our finances by following your financial plan? Would you remind us that we're just stewards, just managers, that everything we have belongs to you, and that you're actually asking for a very small bit of that in the form of giving and sharing, and leaving the vast majority of it for us to enjoy, including saving some for future enjoyment. Lord, thank you for your generosity to us. Help us, Lord, to be generous, that is, to practice generosity, to live generously going forward. In the name of your Son, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
And now it's time to fill out a Connect card.
Yeah, just go to our website, solachurch.life, and scroll to the bottom of the homepage. That's where the Connect card lives. It's where you can let us know that you watched for the first time today. It's also where you can request information about our virtual small group. Super fun. We'd love for you to be a part.
And don't forget, go and follow Sola Church on social media.
Right, totally. It's at Sola Church LA on all your favorite apps. Let's connect.
And we hope that everyone has a great week. And we will see you next time at Sola Church Online.
Bye, everybody.